Good evening, everybody. This is Thursday night, Political Hot Seat. Once again, we're here. We got another Thursday night before the primary. Right now, there's early voting. So everyone who hasn't voted and you're still looking for candidates, we do have a couple more coming up. And of course, it's the sheriff's race tonight. We have Tom O'Donnell, candidate for sheriff, and we will be talking to him. Plus, this is a live call-in show at 727-8750, and there is no internet access tonight. I don't know what happened, but anyway, if you got any questions to ask, you need to call 727-8750, and this is a live call-in show, so you can hear yourself live asking a question. So I'm here with candidate Tom O'Donnell, and there is a few questions that have come up through the last few weeks. So anyway, Mr. O'Donnell, why, and once again, explain why you would want this position and what you could do for the people of Nye County.
I've had 20 years experience with the Nye County Sheriff's Office. I've seen things that work and I've seen things that don't work, and I believe that I have the experience and the drive to make this office something to be proud of. And that's something that we sorely lack at this point in time. There's a lot of guys, it seems to be that they hear that we're the joke of the state as far as the sheriff's department. And one, I don't believe that's true. We've got a lot of good people. There's a lot of good programs. It's just we need to change leadership.
Well, yeah, well, change leadership. I just surprised on how it's being carried on right now as far as being the joke of the state. I don't think so. As a matter of fact, almost every deputy that I've ever met has been very professional. I just don't understand why we can't get through an election without all the the hustling and the scandals and things like that.
Politics being what it is, this kind of thing happens. And it's, it's something I've tried to steer away from. I'm not really doing any direct attacks on anybody. I'm not sitting there. I'm not uglying up the landscape with signs either, though. I've got a couple signs on vehicles, and that's pretty much it. You'll see me. I'll hand you a card. You can call me anytime with a question if you have it, and I will answer it. I'm the guy that answers that phone. But the nature of the beast, as far as any kind of political forum, especially the smaller politics that you deal with directly here, is that it does get nasty. It turns personal. And there's a lot of things that I've seen well-educated people make really stupid mistakes.
Well, that's it. There's probably a number of people who could qualify for sheriff. You got such things as the budget, being undermanned, and I suppose right now they probably really stretching the schedule with the things that I don't know. I haven't had it confirmed or anything. Is there a number of people taking leave on stress?
There are a few people out on stress leave due to HIPAA concerns. I can't mention names or why they're out, the reason for the stress. But it's just the fact that everybody else recognizes this. This does happen in this career field, especially considering some of the events in the past few weeks. And everybody's just tightening up the laces. We're tightening the belt a little, and we're picking up the slack. And when these guys come back, we'll be happy they returned.
How do you feel you become sheriff? Are you going to approach these guys and say, I want you back, or?
Oh, yeah, they're all good officers, each and every one of them. It's the biggest thing is, and not wanting to get in too much to, like I said, the name calling, finger point, anything like that. You can't, well, okay, what happened? We had a guy, an administrator that was arrested. The officers involved are the ones that are dealing with the stress. What you've got is you can't let a retaliatory atmosphere exist, especially in our job, more than anything else. It's like, even if it's just perceived retaliation, you can't let it exist. If I had been the sheriff at the time, and I'm not, this is Monday morning quarterbacking as far as that goes, I would not have had the assistant sheriff come back until after this was all settled. Campaign be damned is for the good not only for the department or the county.
Right, because you guys, it's got to almost be like a brotherhood type of deputies. I mean, you got to rely on each other as backup. And
Oh, yes,
I mean,
sir.
I would have to.
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't want to have to worry about who's backing me up or who is backing me.
And
you know,
that's one thing usually you don't have out here. You don't have, there's always, everybody, personality conflicts, you always have that. It's like any other job. There's a coworker you don't like. There's a coworker that you like, but you don't really want to get that close to. These things happen. Everybody rubs somebody the wrong way. But when the push comes to shove, we unite.
Okay, now budget. The sheriff's department's always had a little bit of trouble with the budget and that, and I know we don't carry the percentage on, you know, deputies per 1,000. We're kind of behind on that. So, what? How would you handle something as such? Is there any way you think you could get it to where maybe a few new deputies along with the ones we already have?
That's, yeah, once you get a hold of the numbers, and as the new sheriff, if I'm elected, if I'm lucky enough to get your vote, I will be able to look at the budget and basically place the items where they need to be. And as far as items, I mean personnel and equipment. You sit there and you run a budget like you run your budget at home. You have a checkbook every month. You have a certain amount that you're allotted to spend. Nobody else outside of the department, this is including the commissioners, can tell you how to spend your money. If you decide to have a couple less cars but a few more cops, you're good. You can do that as long as you come in under the budget. And that's the simplest thing in the world. You run a budget at home, the sheriff runs a budget at the department. And that's the way it's supposed to work.
Now, something I haven't heard much about in Nye County, I've been here quite a while too, is you got cadets.
Yes, sir.
You have people, you can take people along as a ride-along, right?
Yes.
Do you have anything as a reserve? Like, you know, when I was down in Southern California, most of the departments had like, you know, PD reserve or sheriff reserves or something like that that may accompany another officer.
When I first started with this department, I started out as a reserve, and every once in a while I say I kick myself because I'd have another 3 years closer because I started in May 91,
Wow.
and I went full-time in September of 94. But the reserve qualifications have changed, at least that was my understanding, at least around a decade ago, where they expect you to be a little bit more qualified, a little bit more certified. And a lot of people, normal people that would like to be in this position, don't really have the time to dedicate, because you're talking going through an academy.
Right.
That's 6 months that you got to give up of your time, and that's 6 months academy time. Now, if we have to stretch it out, you know, a couple days this week, a couple days next week, that could roll into a few, like a year.
Okay, so they do
So
have to go through the academy.
They have to go through an
completely.
academy so they could be certified Category 1, and then we have to put them through an FTO program, field training, to make sure that they're ready to hit the streets out here and serve the public.
As a reserve.
Yes,
They
sir.
got to go through all that.
Right.
Okay.
Once they do that, they can drive their own cars, and we have a couple guys that are doing that now.
Well, okay, well, we do have a caller on the line, and it is Bob. And Bob, if you can hear me, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, sir. I have a question about the stress situation. Isn't that mostly the stress caused from things that different people in the department had to say?
It's not just what is being said, it's an intimidation factor as far as some of the officers are concerned. You've got a couple of young officers starting out their lives. You've got one at least that just recently got married, and they're looking at this as a career ender for some of the things that they've done. And well, at least as far as being involved with this arrest. And I've talked to a couple of them, wishing them luck, and I told them I'm behind them.
Did that answer your question? Okay, Bob's gone. All right, so back to what we were talking. So the reserve has to go through the whole academy and
Yes,
everything. So it would be really hard to find people who would be dedicated that much to.
That have the time to
Spend that
dedicate, because
time,
you've
yeah.
got, especially with the economy still where it is right now, a lot of people don't really have enough time to take away from their jobs and their family. because you are taking time away from your family to do this.
And naturally, it wouldn't be older people that are retired and that because they couldn't pass the test anyway.
Well,
the
there's-
physical part of it, most of them.
There are some people that retire, I mean, military retirement is 20 years. A lot of them, you can retire 40 to 45.
Right.
And you want to do something extra. A lot of them will go full-time rather than just be a reserve. Some people are just, they're community-minded and they like to do this kind of thing.
Okay, how about the auxiliary police? Is there any way you could think of the auxiliary, I guess you don't call them police, but is there any way that you could use them better as a deterrent, not necessarily go out and make the arrest and pull a gun on somebody?
I think, well, one, the auxiliary unit does a hell of a job. I mean,
I
as
agree.
far as with what they have.
Yeah.
And just them driving around in their cars is a presence. Because really, until you get up to the side of the car and you see it says Sheriff's Auxiliary, you don't know. That's a cop car coming at you, driving through your, and they're trained observers. They've gone through an FTO class. They've gone through an academy themselves. And it's a truncated academy, but they do,
Well,
they're certified so they can do this kind of thing, and they know what they're looking at when they're out in the field.
Well, that's
They
what I was
help
asking.
us a lot more than they get credit for.
okay, that's kind of like what I was asking because I see them when they go through the parking lots and that, and I feel that's got to be a deterrent. And a deterrent is almost as good as anything else.
Yes, sir.
You stop the crime because they pulled up in front of the laundromat.
A dog in
I
the
mean,
yard
you know,
until you know it won't bite you is a deterrent. And
Yeah, and I thought there's a lot of people who I hear things said about them and that kind of stuff, and I say, hey, if I had a convenience store open 24 hours, they could park their car in my convenience store. That could be, you
Well, I
know.
always say if they're picking on you, they're leaving somebody else alone. So.
Yeah, well, I guess, but any other plans like besides changing over? You know, everybody says, what would you change? And I always say, well, they should change the sheriff when they get elected. But I mean, anything you would really plan on changing?
My biggest plan right now is to implement a testing criteria where you test from the rank of corporal, which we don't have here at this point, and I think we need that as a secondary field supervisor, all the way up to the position of assistant sheriff. The only politicized ranks in the office that I believe should be there are sheriff and undersheriff, because the sheriff's going to need somebody that's going to implement his plan, or at least assist him in implementing his plan. Everybody else will be charged or responsible for the administration and the running of the department.
Well, yeah, that's because you say undersheriff. If you're elected, and I really don't know the answer to this, you become the sheriff. Do you get to select, or is it like given to you, this is what you got to? I mean, if you want to make somebody the undersheriff for yourself, can you do it, or do you take
As long as I can stay within budget, I can do that.
Okay.
Yes.
So the budget has a lot to say with who you get put into.
Expenditures always, if you can fit it in and make it work, you can make it work.
All righty. Well, we're going to need to go to a break, and we'll be back just after these messages.